And we have Senator Ted Cruz with us, who is in Texas, I guess in and around Houston. How are you, sir?
Mark, I'm doing well. It's good to be with you this evening.
Where are you exactly?
I'm in Houston, my hometown, which is still seeing very significant rain and flooding. We've still got a lot of people in distress, and Harvey continues dumping water on us, and so the floodwaters keep going up.
Tell us what you know about the situation there now, and also about the government response. And one of the great things is the response of the people, even without the government.
Very much so. I mean, this is an historic storm. This is a 500-year storm, the likes of which Texas has never seen. It started a few days ago as a Category 4 hurricane slamming into the Gulf Coast. Communities further south, like Corpus Christi and Victoria and Rockport, were just hammered by high wind and rains. It destroyed and damaged a lot of places there. A lot of folks are without power still. And then it turned and went north and essentially parked over Houston. And it became a tropical storm at that point and did something unusual. You know, Texas, we see our fair share of hurricanes. It's just part of living on the Gulf Coast. But what has made this particularly damaging is that it's just sat there and has just dumped rain upon rain upon rain. And the flooding is truly unprecedented. And so we've seen over 3,000 people rescued in high water situations. People just trapped as the waters are rising, as their trucks and cars are flooded, as their homes are flooded. And so I spent the morning at the George R. Brown Convention Center, which has been turned into a shelter for some 5,000 people, and I was just visiting with folks who'd lost their homes and helping serve them chili for lunch. And you know, many of them had been rescued from the roof of their house by a helicopter or from their back porch in waist-deep water by a boat. And we've seen, I got to say, the first responders have been truly phenomenal. The firefighters and police officers and the EMT and the Coast Guardsmen and the National Guardsmen and just the ordinary citizens. Hundreds upon hundreds of Texans who had boats have just jumped in the boats and have been out rescuing their friends and neighbors. And it's encouraging in the face of disaster. It's inspiring to see Texans coming together and helping their neighbors.
You know, as I watch the weather here, Senator, they're saying that it's going to get worse because there's going to be more rain and the water is nowhere to go. Is that what you're hearing
right.
too?
That's exactly right. Obviously, the ground is soaked to capacity, and yet the rain keeps dumping upon us, and so it has nowhere to go. There are several reservoirs to the west of town that are full and at capacity, and so some of that water is being released and running down the bayou to downtown, and so causing flooding downtown. And so they're trading off flooding on both ends and trying to balance it to minimize the destruction. And the storm we're expected to see rain for at least another day, if not 2 or 3. And so the need for rescues will continue. And I will say to the Texans who are listening, if you're in harm's way, try to get somewhere safe and high and dry. Don't go to your attic. Your attic is a very dangerous place. If water is rising, if you go to your attic, make sure that you have an axe or something to break through the roof, because far too many people get trapped in their attic and the rescue workers can't find them. You're safer on your roof if the water is rising quickly than you are in the attic, because at least on your roof the rescue workers can see you and get you out of there. And let me say finally to those in and around rising floodwaters, if at all possible, don't get in your car. Unless it is an absolute emergency, the most dangerous thing you can do is get in your car. Water can be deceptive. And every time we have a big flood, people drive into water thinking they can make it, and the water carries them away, and it can pose an enormous threat to the life and safety of you and your family. If you can avoid getting in the car, that's by far the safest thing to do.
And what of the American people? I mean, the vast majority of us are not there. Yep. What can we do? What should we do?
Well,
how do we help our fellow citizens?
A number of things, Mark. One of the things I will say is just the prayers of Americans across this country, that we are being lifted up in prayer, and it's powerful, and we're grateful, and it has a real impact. Secondly, there are an enormous number of people all across the country, not in harm's way, that are giving, that are going to the websites of the Red Cross or the Salvation Army and are either signing up to volunteer or are contributing. We're seeing people from all over the country coming and bringing equipment. The Cajun Navy from Louisiana is here helping rescue people. We're seeing people from New York and California and all over the country just getting in their cars, getting in their trucks, heading down and assisting with search and rescue. And it means so much. And Texans, we're incredibly grateful for the prayers and love and support that's just pouring out across the country.
How do you see the coordination effort going on between all the levels of government?
Remarkably good. So I'm right now at the Harris County Emergency Center, which is the county where Houston is located. And it is a facility that has, it's a high-tech facility that brings together local and county and state and federal officials all in one room, so they're able to coordinate resources. And one of the things that I've been spending a great deal of time doing is working to help coordinate those resources. So I've been talking to mayors and county judges on the ground. So for example, yesterday morning, the mayor of Houston, Sylvester Turner, and the county judge, Ed Emmett, both told me they didn't have sufficient rescue assets. They didn't have enough boats and helicopters and high water trucks, that the volume of people stranded was so massive, the 911 calls, that they needed additional assets on the ground. And so I spent much of the day yesterday on the phone with federal officials and state officials trying to mobilize and deploy assets. And so we've seen Governor Abbott in Texas sent over 500 DPS troopers down to Houston. He called up and deployed over 3,000 National Guardsmen to Houston. He sent boats and helicopters to Houston. The federal government, I've spoken to the president, to the vice president, to numerous cabinet secretaries. Everyone has pledged full, absolute, immediate support and cooperation. We have folks like, for example, the Border Patrol that reached out, and they have trained teams that do high water rescue from people who are in the Rio Grande and are at risk of drowning. So they've sent their high water rescue teams up to Houston along with boats and jet skis and helicopters. We're really seeing assets coming together, focused on the preservation of life, which has to be and should be the first priority.
It always seems like politics gets involved in all these events, and even something as horrific as this. And early this morning, Congressman Peter King of New York, who really has it out for you, he tweeted something that, you didn't support his bill for his part of the country, but he will support a bill. As I recall that bill, it was billions and billions of dollars, 2/3 of which was pork that was added to that bill. Do you want to respond to this?
Well, listen, I think there is time for political sniping plenty of days of the year, and so I really don't want to get into it with him or anyone else. We're facing a crisis right here, a community with massive threat of loss of life, and our focus is just on helping people overcome this natural disaster. I will say I've been really encouraged by the outpouring of support from the very top. When I spoke with President Trump, the president said, "Ted, what does Texas need? Whatever the state needs, you got it immediately." And that's what the president directed the cabinet at the cabinet meeting, and that's what we've heard from every cabinet secretary. And we're seeing it on the ground. Mark, at the shelter this morning, I visited with an older woman who was on oxygen and using a walker. And she described how her house filled up with water, and so she fled the house in waist-deep water with her walker, barely able to stand. My mom uses a walker. It to be mobility challenged and in waist-deep water is really scary. And she was picked up by a furniture truck, Gallery Furniture, big furniture store, terrific store down here in Houston. They've donated their trucks to help people in need, and the truck took her to the shelter, and she was really grateful to be safe and dry and out of harm's way. We're seeing that kind of just sacrificial Texans helping Texans, Americans helping Americans, and so that's going to stay my focus, is responding to the crisis and not getting into the political nonsense of Washington.
It looks like some of these evacuation centers are filling up, so hopefully there's other centers, or people will bring them in, bring other people into their homes. They
are. The centers are filling up. The one I was at this morning had a capacity of about 5,000. This morning, we started with about 3,000 there, and by the end of the day, they were expecting to fill their capacity. There are a number of other shelters throughout the community, both official shelters that have been stood up, but then there are also churches, there are also just private organizations that are opening up, and quite a lot of people are just housing friends and family. My chief of staff has a family that are friends with his kids that are staying in their rooms because their houses got flooded in Houston, and there's an awful lot of just people stepping forward, helping each other, which is what should happen, but it's still inspirational to see when it does.
Well, Senator Cruz, our thanks for what everybody's doing in Texas, and our hearts go out, and I hope my audience will be very, very supportive and go to these various organizations and contribute what they can, because our fellow citizens need it. And I'm really very, very impressed with what's taking place there, and we're all very, very concerned about the people of Texas, and by the way, the people of Louisiana too. So God bless you and be well.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. God bless, and we appreciate all the prayers and love and support pouring in from all across the country.
All right, you take care.